Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Scots Way podcast. And today I'm joined by Francis Macdonald and Ross Ryan, who are both artists who have an exhibition coming up at the Scottish Gallery in Edinburgh called A Family Affair, and there's good reason for that. So perhaps, Ross, you could explain about the exhibition.
So this is my second time round this year. So this show, which opened 2 weeks ago, is actually Mum's show that was planned, and my solo show opened in April, just as lockdown was kicking in. So it was some big changes there. One being that people couldn't come into the gallery, which is quite important. So it all got moved online, and we all adjusted and did what we could and made the best of it. And then Mum said she kindly helped out and said that I could have some of my works at her show later on in the year. And I guess we were kind of hoping that no one really knew back in April, but you thought like 6-7 months down the line that more people would be able to go in, but still restrictions, but some people can go in. So no, it's been good.
So Francis, this was to be your solo show. What were your plans for the show, and what were the kind of themes that you were wanting to look at in your painting?
Well, I'm usually on the West Coast, as you've probably seen, up, Iona and down the Mull of Kintyre, maybe some other islands, but this year not so. Mainly down the Mull of Kintyre, so Ronnachan, down Kintyre coast, and a few of Iona, and around Crinan and down to Loch Sween, areas that I could get to. I mean, sometimes I've got paintings of France or Italy if I've managed to get away, but this year, nothing like that. So it's a really Scottish show. And it worked out quite well, Ross taking a few spaces. I did manage to get 39 paintings done, but with him doing a few extra, I might have had to do 50 otherwise. So I managed to get out of that a wee bit. So that was good.
And Ross, when you became involved in the show, did you think that you would have to kind of match the themes, or were you always going to have your own, because you've got different styles, so were you always going to have your own ideas?
Yeah, I think we're both, there's never any form of a theme set. Certainly we haven't had that from the Scottish galleries, so they do let you get on with what you want to do. And we've been around each other's work since I can remember, in and out of each other's studios and talking about it. So yeah, it was the big difference was that the works would be hung together in a lovely big space like at the Scottish Gallery. And I'm still keen that I can maybe get up to see it this time round.
The exhibition's on, I think, to the 23rd of December. Is the gallery going to be open at all?
Yes, so they're working on by appointment. So 3 days a week, and which is quite nice. So that means, if you turned up for an exhibition on an opening, say a preview, you might have 100 or 200 folk there, and it's hard to see the works, though it's a good party.
Yeah.
But with smaller numbers going to look at and having the whole space to themselves, I think that probably works quite well.
Yeah. So, Francis, you mentioned the areas that you've been mainly painting, and you're based in Argyll, based in Crinan, and that area has really become well known as a kind of haven for artists. Could you maybe explain why that is, in your opinion?
Well, I think, there's so much to paint for a start. I mean, it's amazing. And I don't know why so many of them come. I mean, around Ardfern and Kilmartin, there's a lot of young people come, and maybe, they just have time to paint, because there's not so much going on. I mean, there's plenty, but I mean, I think probably, people, and then, they see other people getting down to work and they get tempted, and, before you know it, there are quite a few of them working. So there's been, it's been a tradition here. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I've been, most of my life, associated with Argyll. My mother's from Melbourne, my grandmother's from Argyll, all the usual stuff, another granny from Tarbert. So I've been in this area, although, after I started school in Tarbert and then moved to Greenock, so I've always been West Coast.
Yeah.
And, it's just, I don't know why they all come to this area, apart from the fact there's, if you want to paint outside, it's all there. But there are people doing much more complex things and nothing to do with the scenery, but they still seem to settle in Argyll. It's really nice. Quite a community.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I think that idea sometimes of a community, it happens with other arts as well, but people say, well, there must be something going on there, so maybe that's a place to be. And it does seem that Argyll has that about it.
Yeah, no, it's really great. And we've encouraged it at the hotel, and we've got a gallery that you can have an exhibition in, and we've got all the rooms are dedicated to Scottish artists. So I'm pushing the art as much as possible. They're not all dedicated to me. Ross is one room and I've got one room, but we've got Archie Forrest and the Schoolers and a lot of well-known artists showing. Gordon Mitchell. I mean, they have room. They've got their original artwork in it and their name on the door. So I mean, I'm trying, like everybody else, I'm encouraging more artists to come here. I think it's wonderful.
Well, I mean, I've been lucky enough to be to the gallery space at the top of the hotel.
Yeah. I hope you were at a party there, were you?
I'm sure I have been at a party once at least. But the space is incredible, and also just the views are incredible. It's a very special part of the world for that alone.
Yes, I think, we're in there are very few places you can stand at that height looking right around you, the canal and out to Jura, and you can see Mull there. I mean, it's incredible. So there you go. I'm glad you got on the puffer.
Absolutely. Ross, how do you approach your painting? Does the area inspire you in the same way, or are you looking at different things?
Yes, no, it does. I mean, I've been away a lot painting as well, so I've really just kind of been home 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a painting of Berlin behind just now. But so I was out there for 4 winters and then Spain for another 4 winters. So I quite like to work on a theme. So when I was in Germany, I was curious of the kind of nightlife in Berlin in respects of what was going on in the streets at night and all the graffiti artists out. So I would just go and record that as a landscape artist. But I guess as heart's always been on the West Coast, so coming back here, it wasn't a difficult thing to choose and what I would be painting here. And the link with the boats as well, and being out in and around the islands it seems pretty natural and comfortable to be doing that. So that's what we're working on just now anyway.
It seems quite an extreme, isn't it, to go from the nightlife of Berlin to perhaps the fishing boats and whatever round about Argyll?
Yeah. No, it was the kind of, I was in and out all the old squats and stuff, and it was pretty interesting. My attraction was all the lights and how someone was still kind of alive and jumping at night, whereas here it's very, very dark. So it was, what wasn't in Crinan was the attraction. And then, but it picked up the kind of discipline, and so every night I would head out painting in Berlin, and then I've kind of adopted that when I've got back to Crinan and being outside. So I generally do most of the work in situ, and that's been my kind of benchmark really.
And in terms of how you work, do you work in very different ways, Frances? I mean, how would you approach the blank canvas, so to speak?
Well, I just, when I'm, if I'm working outside, I just plonk it there on easel and go straight on. I don't draw, I don't sketch onto it. I use a palette knife, so I go straight in with palette knife, and that's it. Hope for the best. And, as long as I can see my horizon, I can pretty well know what it's going to be like. So I can do that. And whereas Ross likes to tie himself to the mast on the boat and go out in a gale, I have to pick a day that's quite good, because otherwise, I'm not going to be able to work. He likes all that mess. Whereas with a palette knife and, standing there on the beach, I'm not really too keen on the gale coming along. But so I pick a better day usually. And then if I start a 16 by 18 inches, we have to translate that into centimeters. But anyway, 16, it's sort of moderate size. And then I go back to studio and I maybe work something quite a bit bigger from that. So that's how I do it. Completely different to Ross's approach when he just goes off on the boat. Or, I mean, sometimes you're on the beach, aren't you, Ross?
Yeah, because it's so beautiful. I mean, I prefer to paint in the winter. I think in the summer when if you're out in Iona and it's so idyllic.
Yeah.
You just want to look at it really, rather than get stressed out trying to paint it. Whereas Mum enjoys all those kind of viridians and turquoises and lovely blues. So yeah, I quite like a gale to kind of push you through the work.
The kind of a more stormy aspect. It sounds as though if you're painting when you're actually on the water, then that does sound as though it's going to lend itself to that.
Yeah, it's good. Your studio's moving, lots of things are going on, accidents happen, which become part of your work, and sometimes you try and recreate them again.
So I do know that sometimes artists don't particularly like to explain their own work. So I thought what I would do is get you to explain each other's work or describe each other's work, if you wouldn't mind that. Francis, how would you describe Ross's work?
Right. Well, I mean, some of my favorites of his, funny enough, we're talking about Berlin, were the graffiti ones. They were amazing, these fabulous, it was mainly black and white, of course. I was quite like that. And so the graffiti, a lot of strong line and a lot of really definite lines there. And the ones now, and then then you're in the Galapagos. So, and that started off with a lot of fish. So there was a lot of balloon, a lot of undersea, and that sort of thing. So that was interesting. But I think now with these seascapes hanging onto the boat, and you can feel as if you're at sea, or you can feel as if you're going round Ardnamurchan Point on a bad day when you look at one of his paintings, and you're glad you're not there. That's me at any rate. And Barra, heading off to Barra across the Minch, he'd be really happy tossing around on the Scarp, and I might get the ferry for that bit. But then I'd join him on the boat in Barra. And I mean, it's not that I'm frightened of being at sea, because I worked with a shipping line for 3 years. So I'm used to being tossed around in the Bay of Biscay and out to Cape Town and stuff. But it's just, as far as taking all my art stuff on the boat, I think I prefer. I have painted in the last few years a few paintings on the Scarp, and but mainly when she's anchored nice and calmly somewhere. But no, I think Ross's work is stormy, and it's just like sort of very definite. There's no question of trying to think what you do. It just looks as if he's just got on with it, and the weather's maybe taken control, and it's got messier and stormier looking. That's what I think.
Excellent.
I hope that's right. I might get into trouble after this.
I don't want either of you to get into trouble. Scarves to your boat, Ross, which is based in Crinan.
Yeah, so well, you might have seen it if you've been up, but it's an old,
beautiful boat.
It was Mum and Dad's boat, and I've kind of taken it on. And it's an old herring fishing boat, so that's become a kind of studio at the same time. And it's introduced me to all the things that are dear in respect of landscape and the people on the islands and all the chance encounters. And I'm very fortunate to have it. And we, spend a lot of time cleaning it up and working on it. And she does charters in the summer, so it works quite well. The times where I would maybe not be so interested at painting when the light is high and there's lots, waiting for the winter when the guests aren't on it. So it works quite good.
And the same question to you, if you don't mind, how would you describe your mum's work?
I think predominantly the word would be strong, like very strong. So there's no doubt about it, I was quite anxious at hanging my work alongside hers, because it's very primary, thick paint. It's a classic style, and it looks, to some folk, it might look like they could maybe replicate it when people maybe look at like a Jackson Pollock or other forms of pop art or kind of conceptual art. But the way it looks easy is the difficult bit, and I can assure you, I've tried palette knife. It is not straightforward. It is. It can all go purple and brown. You know, you're laying thick paint, 5mm paint onto 5mm paint, and keeping that edge clean and charging your palette all the time. So Mum definitely makes it look easy, and she has become like a master of her environment, particularly up in Iona, where she probably doesn't really even need to look at the landscape that much. She can make decisions, or she can make decisions as the tides to be in or the tides to be out, because she knows that space well. And and perhaps that's something that happens to artists the more you do it, that you maybe don't need to stray so far. Like Joan Ardley became very, very interested in Caterline and was doing less portrait painting. Towards the end of her life, she was really into that one spot. And I think Mum has that link to Iona, and I don't know anyone else who can have such good results. So it's impressive stuff. Hopefully we'll pick up some of the tips along the way. I'm watching.
So, Frances, how did you become an artist in the first place? Was it the art school, or was there another way that you went?
No, it wasn't art school. No, I had always been able to draw. That was the first thing. So instead of reading or something when I was little, I'd probably end up drawing. And so I was always drawing, and I was really encouraged to do that. And however, when it came to the crunch of going to art school, there was total resistance at home, because I had a cousin who was completely wild at Edinburgh, and I won't mention any names. But anyway, so my parents were sort of up in arms, and I thought, well, the other thing I want to do is travel. And that was, my grandmother, believe it or not, was at sea. I mean, can you imagine that generation with City Line? And she was at sea for about 20 years and going all around the world. And my aunt joined her for 3 years. So they were quite adventurous.
Wow.
And I thought, well, I'd heard all the stories and seen pictures of Bombay, or it's now Mumbai, and everything, and stuff they brought back. And I thought, I've got to get to sea. And then when I started finding out about it, I found out it's quite difficult to get a job at sea, the sort you might want. And, as an officer, rather than, just maybe making up beds all day. So then I did a nursing training at Edinburgh Royal, and then I found you had to be a midwife. So I did a midwifery at Simpsons, and then a year in the operating theatre. So you needed a lot of qualifications. By the time I'd done all that, I got a really stupid job, and that was it, off to sea for 3 years. And which is great, because I did get a chance all that time when I was nursing, whatever, to paint. I had an easel up in my room in the nurse's home, trying to avoid it with my white apron, and selling stuff to, just for pin money. And I did the same at sea. And then when I came to Crinan, of course, I had a lot more time on my hands. Here I was in the country, having had a very exciting life. And Nick was running the hotel, and I was basically doing the flower arranging. So I had more time to really get down, because I had to find something definite to do. So I really sort of threw myself into it. And I was quite lucky. There's a lady in the next village at Acnamara who showed at the Scottish Gallery, and not the Scottish Gallery, the RSA, their exhibitions. And she said, look, why don't I take something through? So the local joiner hacked together a frame, Ronnie Gilbert. You've maybe met Ronnie. He works in a boatyard.
Oh, yes, yes.
But anyway, Ronnie hacked together a frame, and I did a painting looking out the window at Crinan, just across to the dummy lock. And my God, it got in. So I thought, here I am, an artist. So having had a painting through there, I thought, this is the way to go. So after that, I just kept at it. And the more I exhibited in, open exhibitions, the more chance you got to show in galleries, and you work your way up, and eventually you get to Scottish Gallery, and you think, well, that's great. So that was it, really.
And what about you, Ross? How did you, I mean, obviously it was in the family, but how did you start to think, yeah, this is what I want to do?
Well, I found it was quite an easy decision because none of the other subjects had any strength at all. So that helped. I could draw all right, and I enjoyed it, more importantly. And I could steer boats. So I basically stuck to the two things I could do when I was at school. So yeah, and obviously it was all around me growing up as well. And Dad, I haven't really mentioned, but he had a real keen eye for art as well, and he was really artistic in his own manner. Mm-hmm. The way he presented food, and his ideas were wild and very original. So he had it in a different way, and maybe if he had been had more of an opportunity to have a brush or a chisel, we might have seen stuff coming from Dad. So yeah, so there was the good energy around to do it, which it made it easy for me to go to art school. Like Mum and Dad, I also, when I was 16, I wanted to go to sea before even thinking of going to art school. Just the idea of being on the ocean swell and hearing all their stories about their life at sea. So I was like, that sounds good. Yeah. But it was actually one of the only things they did discourage me off was doing that, just because they said that whole industry had changed. It wasn't the golden age of travel anymore. It was much more about a cruise holiday, and so I'm sure I would have still enjoyed it. So I went to art school and then came out and carried on painting. Had a couple of shows afterwards, so it was little stepping stones, but I kind of been doing it ever since, really, full time, mixed in with doing boat trips.
So, I mean, it sounds like almost your year has become split into the winter of art and the summer of on the sea boats. Is that a kind of a rough estimate?
Yeah, it does, because like I was saying earlier on, I'm not really drawn to the painting when it's all looking so perfect, because in the summer the sun is pretty high.
Sure.
So you don't get the dramatic shadowing, which I like. How you can get the sun on the water and then a black island in the winter, and it's the scenery around here is there. In the winter is really Turner-esque. It's definitely energetic, and you got to be quick to try and capture, and even then you're only recording a very small amount of like this epic scene going on. So yeah.
And obviously, you say the exhibition is on at the moment, but with everyone being locked down as we have been, or at least they're not going anywhere, have you been more prolific, or have you found it difficult to get because you've not been maybe out as much? I don't know. How's your kind of year been, Frances?
Well, there's been a lot of paperwork for the hotel. No guests, lots of paperwork, working out how to get through a year with no guests. Yeah. So that has been really hard work, but usually if I can do that in the morning, and then by the afternoon or the early evening, I've been thinking, or head for the studio. And it's actually worked out quite well, because you really had a feeling, I really had a feeling of, thank God I don't have to look at any more paperwork, or talk about money anymore, or lack of it coming in, or what do we do with the hotel? Do we get guests in? Do we have something? I don't know if you've been out, we've got a lovely tent on the patio.
Yes.
It's like have you seen it? It's like a sail with so we've been able to do things, but it's been a real relief to get to studio. So I found it really easy to paint this year. I just got there and that was it, and I really enjoyed it. So I think I'm getting a bit like everybody else with lockdown. Yeah. And I'm trying to think, where am I showing next? I need to, keep momentum going, even though it's winter now. I can't sit down and think, well, I'm going to sit here and wait till we get back in business down in the hotel, So I I will keep painting. So I might have some stormy ones to, competition from my son. Who knows?
Excellent. And Ross,
Right.
what about you? How's things been with you?
It's been extremely busy, which it normally is anyway. So I would have had January, I started doing the charters on the boat at the beginning of April through to the end of October. But obviously the first 4 months were a bit of a write-off. So took advantage of the time and did a lot of extra work on the boat. So during the winter last year, we had taken the roof off the boat, so to speak, and we maybe took off a bit more than we could chew. So there was a few silver linings in the respect that another 4 months of work we put into the boat and do jobs that you wouldn't have done aboard. So she's actually got younger, almost, the boat, and looking pretty good now and ready for an early start next year, which I'm heading off on a big trip in April to try and go around Scotland and start building a kind of series of work for the next exhibition. So it was a difficult time in respects of the knowing where it's all going to end up, as for everybody, but the time that was available was certainly used up.
And were we able to paint new things, or do you have are you just concentrating on the exhibition that has been?
Well, for the show, I did a few new ones for the show that's on at the moment.
Yeah.
But it was really Mum's show, so I did about 10, 12 new works for it, and a bit smaller because I still had works from the previous exhibition in March. But there wasn't much painting this summer, but it was every day down at the boat, sanding and painting and scraping.
Well, sorry. Well, Francis and Ross, I'd just like to say thank you very much indeed for chatting to me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you.
Nice to talk to you too, Alistair.
Nice to meet you and hear about the puffer, or the Vic 32. People won't know what the puffer is.
I should say to the people listening that I know Crinan fairly well, where we're both based, because every year I cook on the Vic 32, which is one of the last puffers, in fact, the only puffer which is on the water, takes passengers. And I am in love with Crinan in general. I didn't know the area before I got involved. It's such a beautiful area. And I can really understand why artists are drawn to it, because it's kind of a little hidden part of Scotland if you don't know it, particularly Crinan. And in that way, it's just such a joy to discover.
Great. Well, come back up. Come out for a run on the Scarb when you get a break in the galley.
I'm looking forward to it, believe you me.
Up on the puffer, yeah.
And I should say that the exhibition is a family affair, Francis Macdonald and Ross Ryan, and it's on at the Scottish Gallery in Edinburgh to the 23rd of December. And we will be back soon with someone completely different. Cheers.